Got a lot of good information in here. In the back of it's all your owner's manuals.
Oh, good.
There's a page in here on water chemistry, which is a lot of it what we're going to talk about right now. So you got free chlorine, total chlorine, pH, and total alkalinity. That's the 4 that you can test with this kit. Okay. The bottom 4, once a month, you got to bring a water sample into the pool store. Okay, so they test your calcium, stabilizer, copper, and iron. Stabilizer is pretty important because it floats on top of the chlorine. It shields the chlorine from being evaporated in the sun. Of course, copper and iron, you just add that to the pool every time you put in some fresh water from the city. So when you get too much in the pool, you have to start treating the pool. Otherwise, you can start getting like brown spots in the plaster and stains. But I recommend that you do this kit twice a week.
Okay.
And really, once you get it down where you don't have to keep questioning yourself and looking at the instructions and all that stuff, you can really run through it in 5 minutes and then go and add your chemicals. But what you're really going to be concerned about is going to be your course number 1 chlorine and your pH.
Okay.
So pH has a lot to do with the chlorine. But what you're trying to do is maintain a 7.2 pH, and it's not easy. I mean, it takes some work, and at least twice a week. Now you could test it every single day if you wanted to. Okay, I don't recommend it, but you can. Eventually, you're going to test it to where the pH is perfect. So if you look on here, we'll see 7.2 to 7.6.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you test it every single day and you add some type of acid, you're going to test it where it's 7.2. If you only test it twice a week, like I recommend, then almost every time you test it, it's going to be 7.8 or 8.2. It just means, by the time you've got around to test it, that the pH has came back up again, and we need to add acid at that point.
So 7.8 is too high?
And anything over 7.2 is really too high.
Okay.
But most of the time you check it, it's going to be 7.8 or 8.2. These new pools take a lot of acid. So you're probably going to be going through about a gallon a week of acid into the pool to lower down the pH. I added some on Monday, but I would probably bet that actually I didn't add any. The pH was still low on Monday. So we'll see where it's at today.
So twice per week, acid, you said?
Yes, ma'am. Probably about a half a gallon every time you test it.
So 1 gallon a week?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you have 2 different types of tablets in here. And those cover the free chlorine and total chlorine. Okay, free chlorine is going to be the DPD number 1, and total chlorine is the DPD number 3. Okay, so free chlorine is what you always want to have in your pool.
Write that down.
No, what did he say? DPD number 1? What?
DPD number 1, and the other one's DPD number 3. Yeah, so everything's down on these directions here, but I'm just going to go over them.
Okay.
DPD1 is free chlorine,
It's total chlorine.
total, and DPD3 is...
No, I'm sorry, you're right. DPD1's free chlorine, total chlorine is DPD3.
DPD3 is total.
Mm-hmm.
DPD1 is free.
That's
Okay.
correct. So, free chlorine is going to be all the brand new chlorine, okay? That it hasn't did anything yet. It can do whatever it needs to do, kill algae, whatever. But total chlorine has basically what's left of your free chlorine and all of your dead chlorine. So, anytime when you're looking at shocking for you, and basically you would just shock the pool anytime you have more total chlorine than you have free chlorine. So anytime you have more dead chlorine than you have free chlorine, that's when you need to shock the pool. And you'll know by testing your water right here.
Okay.
So really, when you look at shocking too, to explain a little bit more of that, there's more reasons why you shock. I mean, you could shock because you have too much dead chlorine. Well, that's what we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But you also can just shock the pool if you just run out of chlorine. So summertime, you're just doing a whole lot of swimming. Maybe you'll swim all day long and you don't have any dead chlorine. Maybe you've tested it, but you just don't have enough. You don't have any chlorine left. then you can go and shock the pool. You just can't swim for 5 hours anytime you shock. Okay. But we're going to see what our free chlorine level is. Okay, so DPD number 1. And we're going to just fill the water up to this line here. And then you have a line for your pH and there's a line for your alkalinity. So I normally just fill up both sides, and we'll mess with the alkalinity in a little bit. We'll talk about a little bit more of that. Did you test your own water at the other one?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I like to bring it in too. Never look bad.
Yeah. It's important.
Is that a free service?
Yes. Well, of course they're going to try to sell you a bunch of chemicals.
Of course, that's okay, because y'all are open only Monday through Friday.
Yeah, we're not in the chemical business, so we won't try to sell you anything you don't need, but
Okay.
just watch when you go into Leslie's.
Oh, okay.
If they try to sell you something you've never heard of, you probably don't need it. Okay, so DPD number 1, we're just going to take the tablet out. We're going to drop it in there. So we want it to turn pink. Pink is good. That means you have chlorine. You just kind of invert it a couple times. You don't need it to dissolve all the way. By then, it's already going to give you what your reading is. So I like to take this little piece of paper and just stick it up behind it. You can read it a little bit better. But free chlorine, you know, it tells you 2 to 4 right there. There's not a 4 on here, but you'd want to be somewhere around 2 to 3 on that color. So I know that says ideal, but that's really for up north. Down here in Texas, especially in the summertime, you want to be a little bit higher, like on the 2 to 3 range.
Okay.
So, but this is going to be the one that you're going to use to adjust that chlorinator over there. So if we felt like that was too much chlorine, that thing was full, then we would go down from maybe 4.5 to 3.5 or something like that. You know, just kind of play with it. Okay, so 3 is going to be the total chlorine. You never have to worry about testing total chlorine if you have nice, beautiful pink chlorine. You just skip that test.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if you test chlorine, the DPD number 1, and it's completely clear, like you don't have any chlorine in there, then you're going to put a tablet number 3 in the same solution. Then if it turns from clear to pink at that point, then you know you have more dead chlorine in the pool than you have free chlorine, and you need to shock the pool.
You get all that, Wes?
Do you understand
I'm
that?
taping what he's saying just so that we can go back and hear it, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's all wrote step by step on this little piece of paper. The
Oh,
only thing,
okay.
it's not in the book, so some people go looking through the book, but no, it's in the kit here.
Okay.
Okay, so the next test is going to be our pH and alkalinity, but let's talk about those guys a little bit. Okay, so that's just these 2 bottles, pH, alkalinity. Now, pH is basically how much acid's in the water. Okay, so if you don't have enough acid in your water, you're going to start building calcium. You start building calcium, it just affects your entire pool. Okay, you're going to see it all over your tiles. Your plaster will just get nasty looking. Plus, it's just not nasty water, dirty water. Okay, and you can have bacteria in it. So, with saying that, pH is very important to take care of. Now, alkalinity's job is basically to control the pH. So if your alkalinity is high, you know that your pH is going to be high. If alkalinity is okay, then your pH can be high, but it's just the alkalinity is not pushing the pH up. The main purpose of, or the first one you want to fix, and this reminds you right here, that if your pH and your alkalinity are high, so if you test both of them, okay, you're going to fix the alkalinity if it's high, okay, because when you fix the alkalinity, it's going to fix the pH too.
Okay.
Okay, most of the time you're going to test it and your pH is going to be high and your alkalinity is going to be okay. But however, whenever you test it and both of them are high, you fix the alkalinity and not the pH. And that's just, you look at this chart, so this side would be for pH, and anytime your alkalinity is high, you flip it over and you go over the alkalinity side. It's all just a difference of the measurement of acid. So, you know, if pH is high, it might take like a pint or a half a gallon. But if your alkalinity is high, it's going to take a whole gallon to put in there. So.
And so the acid just goes straight in the pool? Is that-
Yeah. You just don't want to pour it over any benches
Okay.
or
Yeah.
like the sun shelf. But unless you have a stain, you can.
And empty bottles we can put in the trash?
Yeah.
We used to do that, yeah.
Yeah, you just, I mean, you probably won't put the lid on it.
Yeah.
See, I went back.
Or you can even rinse it out if
Okay,
you want
let's
to.
wait. Let's try to finish.
Okay, so now we're going to test the pH. So we got it at the pH line, okay? The first thing you do before you test pH or alkalinity is you got to take the chlorine out of that water. Okay, so since you have chlorine in here, when you test the pH, it has to have no chlorine. So you look at your kit. What it tells you in the directions that if your chlorine level is 1.5 or higher, which it is, okay, then we actually need 2 drops of this neutralizer. Okay? If it's not that high, then you could be okay with just 1 drop. But you're always going to put at least 1 in there. Most of the time 2. 1, 2, and if you messed up and did 3, it's okay. Just keep on going.
And what are we testing for?
pH.
Oh, okay.
And then your pH bottle is always going to be 5. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you put the lid on, give it a shake, and there's your pH. You can put this back behind it. So it still shows that the pH is a little low, and that's just from startup. So eventually it's going to come up, and it's going to come up pretty fast too. I would probably say maybe by Sunday, most likely, or Monday. I would probably check it again on Monday, or if y'all wanted to play with it this weekend.
And it needs to be between 7.2 and 7.6?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And to
Funny.
increase that, you add acid? Right?
Well, you add baking soda. When you lower it, we need to lower it, you add acid. Okay, so we don't need to increase it right now. We want it to come up by itself because it's a new pool.
How does it come up by itself?
Your pool creates it, pH, I mean, every day. I mean, as soon as you lower the pH down, it's coming right back up again. So you just let it come up by itself once it's a new pool. So, but let's just pretend we just did that test. So we, just to review, we put in 2 drops of the chlorine neutralizer and we put in 5 drops of the pH, and this is what we got. Okay, but most of the time when you fix it, when you test it, it's going to be 7.8 or 8.2 if you only test it twice a week. Okay, so we're just going to pretend that we just tested it and we got the 8.2 color. So this is purple, and we know at that point that we need to add acid. Okay, so what we do is we're going to take our acid demand, it's the other bottle, the last one, and you're going to put it in here and put it on the purple color water 1 drop at a time, swishing it in between drops, counting however many drops it takes to change the color to the 7.2.
Okay.
Okay, and say it took us 3 drops. Well, then we can figure out how much acid we need by going to our chart. So you probably want to go round yours up to 20,000 gallons. If it took us 3 drops, you just follow that over and it's telling us 1/3 of a gallon of acid. Okay, but we wouldn't add that yet. We would want to pour out this water sample and test the alkalinity. So if the alkalinity is high, you're going to need more than 1/3 of a gallon. You flip the chart over and you go by the alkalinity side. Okay, your alkalinity is probably still going to be low too, but we'll check it out. I'll say by Monday or Tuesday, the water's going to come up, or the pH is going to come up. So you'll have to start adding acid next week, most likely, maybe even this weekend.